Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am audible, right? So, yeah, good afternoon, people. So, we will continue from where we have left the class. So, basically, we were discussing social influence, right? Good afternoon, everyone out there. So, we were discussing social influence. And within social influence, we were talking about what exactly is social influence, how social influence can be brought about by usage of power, right? There are different types of power which can be used to bring about social influence. And we have seen the example as well. Okay? So that is what we have done. Then we have and then we can talk about that there are different mechanisms through which social influence is manifested, and we have talked about conformity, we have talked about compliance, we have also talked about the principles based on which compliance can be brought about, as well as the techniques to bring about compliance. So this much we have done. There was the last mechanism that we were supposed to discuss, and that is obedience. So obedience is nothing but giving orders. Right? This is what we have mentioned. And I said that you just write down that it is a form of social influence in which the person is taking orders from the another person to perform certain task or action. This is what we have discussed, right? Then we said there are certain factors why we tend to obey others. Right? Why do we tend to perform those tasks or actions which have been given to us by others, right? So in that context, we have talked about visible badges. We have talked about transfer of responsibility. We have also talked about gradual escalation of orders. And we have also talked about the proximity with authority. Here, the proximity can be the physical proximity, as I have told you, invigilator. If the invigilator is physically present in the class, or you just have been told that, you will be taken care of. So obviously that creates a difference. If the teacher is physically present in the class, the probability of obeying the orders is very high, right? So visible badges we have already talked about. For example, decorated uniform. For example, beacon on the car. For example, honorary titles, right? So they are nothing but the visible badge. Then gradual escalation of order is, let us suppose we are giving certain orders which might be destructive in nature, right? So immediately if you give a destructive order, there is a probability that it might not be obeyed. However, when there is gradual escalation of orders, right? So even if those orders are destructive in nature, often they are being obeyed, right? Then proximity we have talked about. This is what I wanted to discuss. Transfer of responsibility. See, many a times we obey the order by treating ourselves not as an individual who's carrying out an action, but as an instrument who is carrying out the will of the person who has given the order. So we basically shelve off the responsibility. We don't take any responsibility for our action because we believe that we are acting not in the capacity of an individual, but we are acting as an instrument who is carrying out the orders as given by others. Is this very clear? Ha, Prasant, we are only discussing obedience only. ठीक है? We are discussing obedience only. So transfer of responsibility, just write down one line. Just write down. People view themselves not as an individual. People view themselves not as an individual, but as an instrument for carrying out, but as an instrument for carrying out the desires of other people, carrying out the desires of other people, and hence no longer perceive themselves, and hence no longer perceive themselves as responsible for the action, no longer perceive themselves as responsible for the action, as responsible for the action. See, all I'm discussing right now is one of the mechanism to ensure social influence is that you can give orders. Now the point is, if I am giving the order, why is the other person obeying my orders? Why is the other person acting according to the task which I have given to that person? So what are the factors which is compelling the other person to obey the orders? So what are those factors responsible? So one of the factor is that if I am giving you a certain order, what is the probability and why are you obeying my order is maybe because I have a visible badge. I have a beacon on my car. That can be one reason. I have some titles. I am wearing a decorated uniform. So if I am giving you certain orders, the probability of you obeying my order is very high. Is this very clear? Similarly, if I give you some order, why are you obeying that order? Because maybe you don't consider yourself responsible for your actions. You perceive yourself not as an individual who's carrying out that action, but as an instrument who is fulfilling the desire of the person who has given you the order. So then you don't hold yourself responsible for any act of yours. You believe this is the order which is given to you by the authority and you are just implementing the order. Hence, you are just a tool. You are just the means. You are just the instrument. You are not responsible for the action. That is what is transfer of responsibility. Is this very clear? Similarly, many a times you tend to obey the order even if it is of destructive nature, because there is gradual escalation of orders which are happening. Immediately, some destructive order is not being given to you. So even though the overall nature of the order is destructive, you still tend to obey it. Why? Because maybe there is gradual escalation of authority which is happening. Is this very clear? Similarly, why are you obeying the order? That can also be that maybe the person who's giving you the orders, you have a proximity with that person. The proximity can be the physical proximity, as in the person is physically present there, or it can be emotional proximity, or it can be ideological proximity. So there can be different types of proximity because of which you tend to obey the orders which are being given to you by others. Is this very clear? Is it making sense? Now, there is a concept when you discuss obedience, and the concept is destructive obedience. And in order to explain destructive obedience, there was an experiment. This was the experiment which was conducted by Stanley Milgram. Now, what happened in this experiment was there was a chamber, a glass wall was there. Absolutely. You can just obey the orders without changing your attitude. Doesn't make any difference. You are just obeying the orders which are being given to you. So you are carrying out that task. No matter whatever is your attitude, that's not the concern here. You are just obeying the orders. Visible badge, again, I am giving you the order that listen, Prasant, you are not supposed to jump the red light. You will not do that. You will be like, who are you to give me this order? And why should I listen to you? And if a decorated uniform person, if a police official is telling you, listen, you're not supposed to do this, will you not obey the orders? I am telling you not to consume liquor or not to smoke. It is detrimental for your health. You're like, okay, I know what is good for my health. But if I'm wearing a white coat, I'm a doctor, and I'm telling you, look, your situation is not good. You should not consume liquor. You should not smoke. That is going to have severe repercussion. Will you not obey? No matter what is your attitude towards smoking, that doesn't matter. But you will obey because I have that title. I have that expertise. I have that visible badge. Is this clear? Now, destructive obedience is an experiment which is done by Stanley Milgram. There is a glass chamber. On one side of the chamber, you have subjects on which the experiment is being done. On the other hand, I have my confederates. Confederates as in who know that the experiment is going on. In between, there is a glass wall where you can listen. You can, see the person. So I have told the confederates, as in the person who was conducting the experiment has told the confederates that you have to act that you've been given the shock. Obviously, asli mein shock nahi de rahe the. You have to act out that you've been given the shock and deliberately you have to give the wrong answer. So the experiment was that the subjects are going to ask questions from the confederates. For every wrong answer, the subject will be giving a shock to the confederates. And for every subsequent wrong answer, the intensity of the shock will increase, varying from 100 volt to 440 volts. So the person who were conducting the experiment, they were very sure that the subjects would not go to the extent of giving 440 volt shock, because obviously that can lead to the death of the person, right? However, to their surprise, they found that more than 95% of the subjects did go to the extent of giving 440 volt shock. So then they wanted to understand that, knowing that this might lead to the death of the person, despite that, they did go to this extent. Why? This is the reason why, despite being destructive in nature, we tend to obey the orders. I hope you guys have written this. Can I proceed now? Did I give you a flowchart for mob violence? Did I give you the flowchart for the mob violence? I've given that. You were answering yes for that only, no? That I've given you the diagram. You have a crowd, then crowd becomes the active crowd after the accumulation of energy, whether it is social comparison, feeling of relative deprivation, laxity on the part of administration, right? Lack of proper grievance redressal mechanism, because of which there is submergence of individual's identity into group identity. There is perception of homogeneity, right? Okay? And because of which नहीं 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 रिमझिम नहीं नहीं अच्छा नो फ्लो चार्ट ओके ओके वेट 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 अभी डोंट मेक द डायग्राम लेट मी फर्स्ट फिनिश crowd Crowd becomes the active crowd because of the accumulation of energy. And how this energy is accumulated: when there is social comparison, when there is feeling of relative deprivation, when there is lack of proper mechanism for grievance redressal, when there is apathy on the part of administration. So crowd becomes the active crowd or the mob. When they become the mob, there is submergence of individual identity into group's identity, right? No longer mob is an individual. Mob may, every individual who's a part of mob, their individual identity has been submerged into the group identity, and group identity doesn't have a face, right? So there is a transfer of responsibility. There is diffusion of responsibility. You believe you will not be held responsible for any act. Why? Because you are a part of mob, and mob doesn't have a face. So that fear, that deterrence is not there, right? At the same time, there is a perception of out-group homogeneity. So whosoever you are attacking, you are not attacking the person because of that individual. You are attacking the person because you believe that person belongs to a certain community, right? So there is out-group homogeneity. There is a prejudice which is existing. As a result, you perform the action in a direction which is incited by the leader, and whosoever is the leader. They can be anyone who's leading that mob. So if you are going to be an administrator and in your area there is a problem or probability of some mob violence, then what is the immediate steps that you should take? What should be the immediate steps that should be taken if you have the intention or if you want to tackle this problem of mob violence? In general, what can be done? No crowd gathering, absolutely, that can be the thing. Do not allow association first and foremost, we need to individuate the crowd. We need to tell the crowd that you can be held responsible in the individual capacity. We need to install CCTV cameras so that they can be captured. There should be different hoardings which should be placed at different places with respect to surveillance messages. Then, as you guys have said, do not allow association of large groups. Deployment of police personals. Barricading. Proper barricades can be installed. Technology, drone technology can be used to capture the individuals, right? So drone technology, you can make use of technology in order to individuate the people. You can refer to some charismatic personality who have considerable influence on the mob so as to calm and compose them. We can make use of distractors, as in distracting the attention of the mob. We can ensure or make efforts to maintain calm and composure among the mob. Absolutely. Crowd violence. The heading is crowd violence. We can make efforts to spark positive emotions. भाई किसी कारण से वो नाराज है ना, so we should try to make efforts to spark positive emotions among them. This is the immediate step which can be taken. If you have a fear that it might erupt in your area, so in order to be prepared, these are few steps which can be taken. Is this clear for everyone? Next, give the heading persuasion. Give the heading persuasion. Write down. Persuasion. Give the heading, write down. It is a process. It is the process aimed at changing. It is the process aimed at changing a person's or a group's attitude. Persuasion, write down the definition. It is a process aimed at changing a person or group's attitude or behavior towards group's attitude or behavior towards some event, idea, object, towards some event, idea, object, or other persons, I'll repeat. Persuasion is a process which is aimed at changing a person's or group's attitude or behavior towards some event, idea, object, or other person by using written or spoken words by using written or spoken words to convey the information comma feelings comma to convey the information comma feelings comma reasoning full stop. So persuasion is a very dedicated phenomena in which a person or a group of person is trying to change the attitude or behavior with respect to some event, some idea, some object or other person. And how am I trying to persuade you? Either through written or spoken words, and through which or the combination of both, and through that I am trying to convey my feelings, my reasoning, my information to you. Persuasion is a receiver centric exercise. So if the receiver does not act according to my intention, the person who's trying to persuade you, then we say persuasion has failed. In the process of persuasion, there is a source, or you can say the change agent. There is a target group, or let us say the receiver. There is a message which I am trying to convey. And persuasion is a receiver centric exercise, right? So if the target group or receiver is not acting according to the intention of the source or the change agent, then we say that the process of persuasion has failed. Is this very clear? Persuasion is one of the type of social influence. हमने कहा ना कि सोशल इन्फ्लुएंस में डिफरेंट मैकेनिज्म्स होते हैं, कॉन्फर्मिटी हो गया, कॉम्प्लायंस हो गया, ओबीडियंस हो गया. वैसे ही परसुएशन इज वन ऑफ द टाइप ऑफ सोशल इन्फ्लुएंस. इट इज जस्ट फॉर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग. इज दिस क्लियर? Aristotle is referred as father of persuasion. Aristotle is referred as the father of persuasion, who says that the change agent can bring about persuasion by using three things. Aristotle is referred as father of persuasion, who says that the speaker can bring about persuasion by making use of three modes: ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos refers to the credibility of speaker. If a person who's trying to persuade is credible, the chances of persuasion, successful persuasion, is very high. ठीक है. Logos मतलब logical reasoning. You are giving them facts, statistics, information in order to support your arguments. Pathos means appealing to their emotions. As in, you are making an appeal to the emotions of the target group in order to persuade them. So establishing emotional connect with the audience is usage of pathos. Providing logical argument is logos. And ethos is when the persuasion is based on the credibility of the speaker. Is this very clear? Give a heading. Aristotle's perspective on persuasion. Aristotle's perspective on persuasion. Aristotle's perspective on persuasion. You can get a direct question. They can either ask you, how will you use persuasion? Okay. For example, how will you use persuasion to successfully implement Swachh Bharat mission or to successfully implement family planning? So can I say in the answer, you can start with that you can make use of Aristotle's perspective, that how successful persuasion can be brought about by making use of three modes. One, you can look for a speaker to persuade the audience who has a credibility. I'll discuss with you what I mean when I say credibility. Then you can also talk about how making an appeal to their emotions, establishing an emotional connect with the audience, and at the same time providing them data, statistics, right, in order to justify your argument. So by using these three things, we can ensure successful persuasion with respect to, let us say, Swachh Bharat mission, or let us say family planning. Is that very clear? Is it making sense? ठीक है. So if the question comes social influence कैसे करेंगे, तो आप उसमें भी लिख सकते थे conformity हो गया, compliance हो गया, या फिर वो power हो गए, 5 types of power. Similarly, if the question is saying how will you bring about successful persuasion, this is how it can be done. There are different ways of writing the answer. ठीक है, we are just discussing different ways. Write down Aristotle's perspective for persuasion. First, ethos. Ethos. Ethos is an appeal to the ethics. Ethos is an appeal to the ethics. And it is a means. Ethos means an appeal to the ethics, and it means of convincing someone. It is a means of convincing someone of, it is a means of convincing someone of the character, authority, or credibility of the persuader. Character, authority, or credibility of the persuader. Full stop. If I tell you that, look, listen, this person who is saying all of this is a credible person. The person has the knowledge, the person has the credibility, the person has the authority. The chances of you getting persuaded by the message is very high. And how it can be done? Write down. It can be done in multiple ways. It can be done in multiple ways. For example, it can be done in multiple ways. For example, being a notable figure in the respective field, being a notable figure in the respective field, being a notable figure in the respective field. Second, demonstrating the mastery demonstrating the mastery over the specialized vocabulary of the field. Demonstrating the mastery over the specialized vocabulary of the field. Third, being introduced by someone who is in authority. Being introduced by someone who is in the authority. If some authority figure, introduces you, automatically the people believe, okay, the person can be trusted because it is the authority figure who themselves have introduced the person. Is that very clear? So automatically the credibility improves. Next, logos. Logos. To use logos means to cite facts and statistics. To use logos means to cite facts and statistics. To cite facts and statistics, full stop. In fact, the logical appeal can further strengthen the ethos. In fact, the logical appeal can further strengthen the ethos because it makes the speaker look knowledgeable. Because it makes the speaker looks knowledgeable and well informed. Logos can be developed by citing facts. Logos can be developed by citing facts, by making historical analogies, by citing facts, by making historical analogies, or constructing logical arguments, constructing logical arguments by citing facts or using historical analogies or constructing logical arguments. Full stop. Pathos. Pathos. Pathos means to make an appeal to emotion. Pathos means to make an appeal to emotion. Make an appeal to emotion. Full stop. It is a way of convincing the audience. It is a way of convincing the audience about the argument. Way of convincing the audience about the argument by evoking emotional response. It is a way of convincing an audience of an argument by evoking an emotional response. Full stop. Speaker uses pathos. Speaker uses pathos to gain sympathy from the audience. Very effective. Speaker uses pathos to gain sympathy from the audience. Full stop. Pathos is very effective. Pathos is very effective if the speaker and the target group. Pathos is very effective if the speaker and the target group or the audience share the same value system. Share the same value system. Share the same value system. Full stop. Pathos can be developed by using meaningful language, emotional tone, emotion evoking examples, meaningful language, emotional tone, emotion evoking examples, or making funny illustrations. क्योंकि attention span बहुत छोटा होता है. So if you crack a joke or some satire kind of a thing, so then also it ensures a connect with the audience, because the attention span is very small. So if you have in between funny illustrations, it makes that conversation or that address more meaningful. Okay? So making funny illustrations, since the span of attention is short. Is it clear for everyone? Full stop. Write down a question. According to Aristotle, for persuasion, not only ethos and logos, but pathos is equally important. Not only ethos and logos, but pathos is also equally important. Comment. Pathos is also equally important. Comment. Clear है? ठीक है? If you remember the flow chart, in the previous class, I gave you the flow chart in which I said there are certain steps involved, right? I said there are certain elements involved in persuasion. So now we know what is persuasion. It's a process through which you are changing person or group's attitude or behavior with respect to some event, object, idea in a desired direction. Is that very clear? Take it. That's persuasion for us. In persuasion, we have certain elements involved. What are those elements? In simple words, Can you identify the statement? Persuasion. I said it involves certain elements. The elements are who says or who said what to whom by what means. Here for us, who is the source? What is the message? To whom is the receiver? And this is so persuasion involves four elements: the source, receiver, the persuasive message, and the medium, the channel through which the message is being conveyed. So who says what to whom by what means? Clear hai? If you remember the flow chart, if you can revisit the previous class, I have given you the flow chart in which we said we'll discuss the concept of persuasion. I said we will discuss Aristotle's perspective with respect to persuasion. We will discuss what are the elements of persuasion. We will discuss the steps which are involved in the process of persuasion. There are four steps which are involved in the process of persuasion. We can write it as ACRA: attention, comprehension, retention, and action. See, you need to understand persuasion, time and again I'm saying, is a receiver centric exercise. If I'm trying to persuade you with respect to answer writing, right, I'm telling you time and again, please write the answers, please write essay, it is very important, this, that. Okay, I'm trying my level best to persuade you. I'm trying to show you Topper's scripts. I'm trying to show you Topper's talk where they have emphasized credibility aa jayegi na. Okay, then I'm citing you statistics that how previously, if you see the list of the toppers, all those who have practiced mock test, whether it is prelims or mains, the probability of their successes have been very high. Okay, so I am, and then I'm making an emotional appeal. Guys, you have invested so much money of your parents. Please do not let it go waste. Please practice your mocks. Please be very diligent in your studies. Do not get distracted. Okay, do not waste your time. I'm trying to make use of everything, right? But at the end of it, you did not get persuaded. You did not practice mock. So this entire exercise of persuasion has failed. Because persuasion is not dependent upon the source, it depends upon the receiver. So if the receiver is not acting according to the intention of the persuader, then the persuasion has failed. Is this very clear? So there are four process or steps involved in the process of persuasion. The first being the attention. See, I have to persuade you. यहाँ मेरी गरारी अटकी हुई है. I have to ensure that my persuasion is successful. So, in order to hold your attention, I have to try my level best that the message which I'm trying to convey, it needs to be of some utility. It needs to be something which is innovative, which is creative, which is invoking curiosity among you. Only then your attention will be hold on to my message. Otherwise मैं कुछ भी बोलती रहूं, आपको क्या फर्क पड़ेगा? So if I want my persuasion to be successful, I need to hold on to your attention, and for that I need to make my message more relevant, serving some utility for you. It should be something which is attractive, innovative, creative. It is invoking some inquisitiveness, curiosity among you. Only then you will at least give or utilize some time to listen to what I am saying. Is that very clear? So write down, attention. For the source to catch the attention of the target group, for the source to catch the attention of the target group, the message presented, the message presented should be interesting, serve some utility, generate some curiosity, should be distinct, should be distinct, should be distinct. Next, see, again, I'm telling you, it is receiver centric exercise. So the entire focus has to be on my target group, my receiver. What if I'm delivering a message in a manner which you are not able to comprehend? Let us say I'm giving a message in a certain language which you don't understand. So what is the purpose of making efforts? No matter how interesting it is, how utilitarian it is, how, distinct it is. But if you're not able to comprehend only what I'm trying to say, then my purpose has failed. Right? So the message which I intend to deliver should be delivered keeping in mind the frame of reference of my target group. Whether my target group can read or write or not, whether my target group can understand a specific language or not, okay? It makes a hell lot of difference. Okay? So write down. So it has to be keeping in mind. अब आपको समझ आ रहा है जब मैं ये सारे एग्जांपल्स बोलती हूँ तो आपको कहाँ ध्यान रखना है? Suppose करो you have to implement a scheme. And you have to create awareness about the scheme among the people. So that message needs to be made very attractive. You have to convince your audience, your public that look, this is in your favor. And secondly, you should ensure they are able to comprehend. So if they can read and write, then it should be taken, whatever language they understand, it should be taken care of. In case they cannot read and write, audio message should be created for them. So all of that needs to be kept in mind. Is that clear? So write down. Comprehension refers to the ability of source. Comprehension refers to the ability of source to make the target group understand, refers to the ability of source to make the target group understand, to make the target group understand the message full stop. However, it is possible only when the message is framed keeping in mind the frame of reference of the target group. Keeping in mind the frame of reference of the target group. Keeping in mind the frame of reference of the target group. ठीक है? Is this clear for everyone? Now, let us suppose it's an important message and I have delivered the message today and you were pretty convinced also. Then I also forgot and you also forgot. What is the point? I have to make sure that there is proper retention, that whenever that action has to be performed, the message which I have delivered, you are able to retrieve the message, you are able to retain that message. इसलिए it is very important that time and again that message is being conveyed. आपने कभी सोचा एक बार एडवर्टाइजमेंट देके छोड़ क्यों नहीं देते? Why time and again the advertisements are being given? And not only advertisement in general, let us say the government has to implement certain scheme, right? So why is it important to keep on telling about that scheme again and again and again? The government has to invest in that, because if you are not going to tell your public about the scheme again and again, they would not remember it only. उनको पता ही नहीं, अरे हाँ यार एक स्कीम आई तो थी, फिर दिमाग से ही उतर गई. तो गवर्नमेंट को बार बार बताना पड़ता है, इसलिए गवर्नमेंट आपको बार बार बताती भी है. So it is an important part of persuasion that you have to invest in telling your public about these programs again and again. And not only that, whenever you are telling them, so you should always highlight the important messages or the important keywords that needs to be highlighted so that it stays in their subconscious mind. That is the art of persuasion, right? So write down retention. The target group should be able to retain and retrieve the message when required. The target group should be able to retain and retrieve the message whenever required. And for this, the sender tries to present the message repeatedly. The sender tries to present the message repeatedly and also highlight the salient aspect of the message. Also highlight the salient aspect of the message. Last point, as I've already said, last point, action. Persuasion is considered successful. Persuasion is considered successful if the target group, persuasion is considered successful if the target group not only receives the message, but also acts upon it, as intended by the source. Not only receives the message, but also act upon it as intended by the source. Is this very clear for everyone? Did you understand what are the steps which are involved in the process of persuasion? What is Aristotle's perspective? What are the elements involved in persuasion, and what exactly is persuasion? Then, I've already told you that you have, or let me make it here itself. I've already told you in the process of persuasion, you have a source, the change agent. There is a target group to whom you have to send the message, but it is not that easy to send a message. In this process, the person is confronted with certain barriers. Semantic barrier, psychological barriers, and physical barriers. These barriers needs to be overcome in order to ensure successful persuasion. These barriers needs to be overcome in order to ensure successful persuasion. Is this clear? Make this diagram again. On one hand, write the source. On the other hand, target group. The source needs to overcome these three barriers in order to reach the target group. Let me know when we can proceed. As the term suggests, I think most of you can understand semantic barrier. Obviously, if you're not understanding the language which the person is using, if you are not understanding the foreign technical terms which are used, let us suppose I am trying to convey a message to you and I am using certain vocabulary which is foreign for us, which is technical for us, right? So it is important for me to explain the meaning of that terminology, otherwise you would not understand. That is semantic barrier. Again, if I'm trying to, let us suppose I have prepared a scheme for the tribal people, right? Now the problem is that I am trying to convey about the information about the scheme to the tribal people, but they are just not getting persuaded. The reason is there is a semantic barrier. They are not able to understand the language in which the scheme is being conveyed to them. So that semantic barrier needs to be overcome. Did you get the point? Similarly, psychological barrier. It might happen that the people belonging to certain community, okay, they do not have the trust over the administrative officials. होता है ना, you have, let us say, past experience, and because of some of your experiences you do not have the trust that these people are going to work for your betterment. So that trust factor is missing. That is nothing but psychological barrier. Okay. Now let us suppose I am trying to convey a message, but there is a noise in the environment. You are just not able to listen what I'm trying to say. That is nothing but physical barrier. नहीं, ये हटा दो बस. This is what I'm saying. This is the diagram that you have to make. This is how the diagram looks like. That the source or the change agent is trying to persuade the target group. However, in ensuring successful persuasion, they have to overcome these three barriers: semantic barrier, psychological barrier, physical barrier. Start. Semantic barrier. Semantic refers to signs of meaning. Semantic refers to signs of meaning. Semantic refers to signs of meaning. Full stop. The barrier emerges because, first, the words or symbols can have more than one meaning. The barrier emerges because, first point, the words or symbols can have more than one meaning. Second, There are some foreign or technical words involved. Second. First is the words or symbols have more than one meaning. Second, there are some foreign or technical words in the message. Third, there exists a discrepancy. Third, there exists a discrepancy between the verbal and non-verbal aspect of the message. There exists a discrepancy between the verbal and non-verbal aspect of the message. Verbal and non-verbal aspect of the message. Full stop. These barriers can be overcome. These barriers can be overcome. Again, write in the pointers. By use of symbols that are receiver friendly. By use of symbols that are receiver friendly. By use of symbols that are receiver friendly. Second, by making the communication idea-centric rather than word-centric. By making communication idea-centric rather than word-centric. कभी कभी हम लोग नहीं कहते अरे यार words मत पकड़ो, भावनाओं को समझो. So you need to understand the idea rather than focusing on the specific words. Third, use of illustrations and relevant examples. Use of illustrations and relevant examples to support the verbal message. To support the verbal message. To support the verbal message. Is that clear? Next. Psychological barrier. It's the most difficult barrier to be overcome. Psychological barrier. It arises because of incompatibility. It arises because of incompatibility between the source and the target group. It arises because of incompatibility between the source and the target group. Second, there exists emotional separateness between the two. There exists emotional separateness between the two. Emotional separateness, power distance, incompatibility, lack of faith, trust. आप कुछ भी लिख सकते हो. आप power distance भी लिख सकते हो, आप lack of faith भी लिख सकते हो, ठीक है, incompatibility भी लिख सकते हो, emotional separateness भी लिख सकते हो. Next. Psychological barriers are most challenging to be overcome. Psychological barriers are most challenging to be overcome as they result from the personality inadequacies. As they result from the personality inadequacies of both source and receiver. They result from personality inadequacies of both source and receiver. Next. Hence, to overcome this barrier, a climate of trust and understanding, a climate of trust and understanding needs to be developed. Climate of trust and understanding needs to be developed, which will require non-judgmental acceptance, of the target group by the source. Non-judgmental acceptance of the target group by the source. Did you get the point? You have to create that climate of trust and understanding. You have to tell the target group, look, we are not judging you. Remember, I told you a term, unconditional positive regard. Irrespective of their community, their class, their social background, you have to give them that respect. Once you give them that unconditional positive regard, slowly and gradually a climate of trust and understanding can be created. Is that clear? Okay. Next, last, physical barriers. Physical barriers. It arises because of the disturbances in the environment. It arises because of the disturbances in the environment which obstructs the flow of communication. Which obstructs the flow of communication. And it can be overcome by redesigning the physical environment. It can be overcome by redesigning the physical environment. By redesigning the physical environment. Is this clear for everyone? Did you understand everything that we have discussed so far? Write this much. characteristic of the elements. Three important elements: source characteristic, message characteristics, and receiver characteristics. Source, there are three aspects: the credibility of the source, attractiveness of the source, and the power that the source has. Message mein, what I've written is message discrepancy, peer appeal, sideness of the message, drawing conclusion, emotional factual appeal, pleasant form of distractions. Receiver centric, the intelligence, the characteristic features of the receiver, or the selective exposure, attention, interpretation, ya comprehension, whichever word you want to use. If you've done this, then let me know. I'll proceed. Done? I'll start with the source. What I'm trying to convey here is that there are three aspects of the source which can ensure a successful persuasion. Either your source has the credibility or attractiveness or power. However, out of the three, if you can notice that if you have the credible source, the chances of a successful persuasion is very high and very stable also. Why? Because if the person is a credible source, then the internalization of message takes place. If the source has the credibility, then the target group is not only accepting the behavior or the change in the behavior, but they are internalizing the message. So the impact stays for a very long period of time. As far as attractiveness is concerned, you are responding to the persuasion. Why? Because you like the other person. And that liking can be on the basis of similarity in your value system. It can be on the basis of the communication skills of the other person. It can be on the basis of physical attractiveness, right? So that attractiveness, if it's the reason why you are getting persuaded, that's more because you are identifying with that person. However, if you are getting persuaded because the source has the power, then mostly it is the case of compliance. Your attitude has not changed. It is only reflected in your behavior. Why? Because there is a fear of the power of the other person. Is that very clear for everyone? Now the question arises, what constitutes credibility? There are two aspects of credibility, or what contributes the credibility of the source. There are two things. One, the source has the expertise, and other, the source is trustworthy. The expertise and trustworthiness. Pleasant form of distractions, Shantanu. I think that was the last aspect. Pleasant form of distractions. So the credibility is identified through expertise and trustworthiness. Whether the person has the knowledge or not, and second, whether the person is trustworthy or not. And both expertise and trustworthiness goes hand in hand. But in case there is a conflict, it is the trustworthiness which prevails over expertise. So it is the trustworthiness which goes or which gets an upper hand over the expertise, right? So the person which is having high credibility, they are referred as high credibility source, and the one which have low credibility is referred as low credibility source. No need to write anything, I'll dictate everything. क्योंकि ये content कहीं मिलता नहीं है, तो I'll dictate everything, but as of now just listen. ठीक है? So there are two types of sources. One is high credibility source and other is low credibility source. How do you determine the credibility of the source? On the basis of their expertise and trustworthiness. Although we would want a credible source which has both the expertise and who we trust. But in case there is any conflict or the option given to us, we will go for the person who is trustworthy rather than going for the person who has the expertise. Is that very clear? Okay. If you have a high credibility source, the chances of getting successful persuasion is very high. However, there is a concept which exists that is known as sleeper effect. And the sleeper effect says that over the period of time, the impact of persuasion of high credibility source declines. Let me just show you what is sleeper effect. This is what I mean when I say sleeper effect. The degree of acceptance of persuasive message. I have made this graph. On one hand, you have degree of acceptance of persuasive message, and on the other hand, it is time. Right? So over the period of time, you can see that the degree of acceptance of persuasive message of high credibility source declines. However, over the period of time, the degree of acceptance of persuasive message of low credibility source can increase. However, no matter they increase or decrease, there would always be a difference. Is this very clear? So it is very important, no matter how high credible source you are, you have to reinforce your credibility from time to time through your right conduct. For example, there is some XYZ leader who is a very high credible source, but then the degree of acceptance of their persuasive message will not always remain the same and will not always increase. It might decline also. So it is very important for the leader from time and now or time and again, they have to reinforce their credibility. And how it can be done? It can be done through walking the talk. It can be done from leading from front. It can be done, let us say, by ensuring good governance. It can be done by ensuring development, upliftment of marginalized sections. All I'm trying to say is that no matter how high credible source you are, you should not take that high credibility for granted. Because over the period of time, the degree of acceptance of persuasive message will decline if you are not reinforcing your credibility over the period of time. Is that very clear? Similarly, the low credible source, anyway, they have nothing to lose. They are the low credible source, but their degree of acceptance of persuasive message can increase over a period of time if they provide the persuasive message which is against their fundamental interest. I'll give you an example. Let us say I am a businessman, an industrialist. I have various industries which are responsible for environmental pollution. And on the other hand, there is an environmentalist who is always working for the welfare of the environment. Obviously, he has the high credibility. He has the expertise also in the field of environment. And at the same time, he's trustworthy also, because all the time he has been working for improving the credibility, for improving the environmental status, right? On the other hand, I am the low credibility source. I am a businessman, I am an industrialist who is responsible for environmental pollution. He is also giving you the message of environmental conservation. I am also giving you the message of environmental conservation, right? Now, I am a low credibility source, but if I give or some action or a persuasive message which is against my fundamental interest, the degree of acceptance of my persuasive message will increase. For example, I agree to shut down my industry. I give you a message, listen, environment is in a dilapidated situation. If we don't save our environment today, our future would be completely ruined. And in order to keep up with this message of environmental protection, I have agreed to shut down my industries which are responsible for environmental pollution. Whose impact of persuasive message will be more? The person who has been the environmentalist, or the person who has agreed to shut down the industry which was responsible for his economic values, and he has shut down the industry. Why? Because he wanted to persuade the people to protect the environment. तो लोग कहेंगे यार बताओ, अगले बंदे ने इंडस्ट्री अपनी बंद कर दी. If the person can go to such an extent to preserve the environment, then we can also make small efforts. Did you understand the difference? Is this very clear for everyone? Write down. Credibility refers to the extent or degree. Credibility refers to the extent or degree to which the target group believes in the position advocated by the source. Believes in the position advocated by the source. Second point, to assess credibility, it depends upon expertise and trustworthiness. To assess credibility, it depends upon the expertise and trustworthiness. Expertise and trustworthiness. Next, high trustworthiness and expertise go hand in hand. High trustworthiness and expertise go hand in hand. However, in case of a conflict, trustworthiness gets an upper hand. However, in case of a conflict, trustworthiness gets the upper hand. Trustworthiness gets the upper hand. Full stop. Next. Sometimes, next point, sometimes A source with low credibility, sometimes a source with low credibility is more successful sometimes a source with low credibility is more successful in bringing about desired change, than a person with high credibility, when he is seen arguing against his fundamental interest. When he is seen arguing against his own fundamental interest. You can write down the same example. A business giant holding industries, responsible for environmental pollution, will have more credibility on the attitude of the people, with respect to environmental protection, the day he shut down his industries. Full stop. Next heading. Benefits of high credibility source. Benefits of high credibility source. First point. Benefits of high credibility source. First point. The target group exposes themselves more towards the message delivered by HCS लिखना, बार बार high credibility मत लिखना. Exposes themselves more towards the message issued by HCS. Second, they are more attentive towards HCS. High credibility source. And third, they are less likely to question. HCS. They are less likely to question HCS on controversial issues. So they are more attentive towards HCS, they are less likely to question them, and most importantly, they expose themselves more. They are more readily agreeing to listen to what the HCS is saying. So that is why that are the benefits of having high credible source as far as successful persuasion is concerned. Then you make this diagram of sleeper effect. Make this diagram of sleeper effect. On one hand, you have degree of acceptance of persuasive message. On the other hand, you have time. Then you have high credible source and you have low credible source. Make this diagram. Controversial issue. Controversial. If there is any controversial issue and the source is credible, we will not question them because we are already convinced that the person is trustworthy and they are more knowledgeable on this issue. Make this sleeper effect. Done? Right now, over a period of time, the influence of HCS declines. Over a period of time, the influence of HCS declines. And for the same message, oh, this I will dictate. So even if it is not visible, then I will dictate. You just make, अच्छा रुको मैं ही थोड़ा clear बना देती हूँ. ये नहीं भी लिखोगे तो चलेगा. Just show HCS, LCS, time, degree of acceptance of persuasive message, and just mention this difference always exists. बस इतना दिखा दो. Write down. Over the period of time, the influence of credible source somewhat declines, and for the same message issued by LCS, that is low credible source, the receptivity improves. The receptivity improves. Although it never reaches the same level as that of HCS. I'll repeat. Over a period of time, the influence of credible source somewhat declines. However, for the same message issued by LCS, the receptivity improves, but it never reaches the same level as that of HCS. It never reaches the same level as that of HCS. Hence, periodically the credibility needs to be enforced. Hence, periodically the credibility needs to be enforced by HCS. Periodically, the credibility needs to be enforced by HCS. For example, walking the talk, social media, advertisements, leading from front, development, कुछ भी लिख सकते हो, upliftment of marginalized section, proper implementation of laws, good governance, social media, advertisement, leading from front, walking the talk, etc. Is it clear for everyone? Next, attractive source. हटा दिया था क्या मैंने? Next is attractive source. बस एक लाइन में लिखो. The attractive source is perceived. The attractive source is perceived to be more likable, is perceived to be more likable by the target group. Perceived to be more likable by the target group. Hence, they are more receptive. Hence, they are more receptive of counter-attitudinal messages. They are more receptive of counter-attitudinal message issued by the source. Issued by the source. They are more receptive of the counter-attitudinal message issued by the source. Here, attractiveness can be either physical attractiveness, or it can be on the basis of the communication skills, or it can be with respect to ideological compatibility or attitudinal similarity. Any word you can use. Next, power. The last point, power. It is the potential to influence the behavior of target group. It is the potential to influence the behavior of the target group in the intended direction. Last is power. It is the potential to influence the behavior of the target group in the intended direction and greater is the power of the source, and greater is the power of the source over the target group, greater is the power of the source over the target group, more likely the target group will be persuaded. More likely, the target group will be persuaded by the source. More likely, the target group will be persuaded by the source. Is this clear for everyone? Next, message. Make these two diagrams. Girdhar, I was actually waiting when you guys are going to ask. Counter attitudinal message is not only the second case. In every case, it is a counter attitudinal message. आप खुद सोचो ना, अगर it is not counter, then why there is a need to persuade? If there is no counter message, then there is no need to persuade ना. मैं persuade किस केस में करूंगी? जहां पे you are not behaving in the similar manner as I want you to behave. If your attitude is not same, if your behavior is not same, that is why the counter effort has to be made na, to persuade. Persuade क्यों करते हैं? Because I have an intention of changing your attitude, your behavior in a desired direction with respect to certain object, idea, person, event. अगर वो counter नहीं होगा, different नहीं होगा from what I want, then what is the need to persuade only? Counter है तभी ना मैं persuade कर रही हूं. Is this clear? अब बनाओ. Once you make this, please let me know. Are we done with this diagram?
Done? Okay, look at the diagram. There are two individuals. Okay. I have created three zones here. Zone of acceptance, zone of indifference and zone of rejection. एक बात तो clear है that you and me are not on the same page with respect to a certain message, right? And that is why there is a need to persuade. ठीक है? I have to make sure that whatever message I am delivering to you, that should fall in your zone of acceptance. बहुत ध्यान से सुनना, मैं बहुत आराम से चल रही हूँ, ठीक है? I'm just sitting people because now थोड़ा मुश्किल हो रहा है, ठीक है? So just try to listen. I am saying that there are two individuals I have created and I'm talking about three zones. ये माइंड में होते हैं, zone of acceptance, zone of indifference, zone of rejection. Since you and me are not on the same opinion or not having the same opinion with respect to a certain message, I have to persuade you, right? If while persuading my message falls in your zone of acceptance, then you will be persuaded. ये होता है, और ऐसा क्यों होता है? क्योंकि जब कोई मैसेज फॉल्स इन योर जोन ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस, then you believe that the discrepancy in the position advocated by the source and the position advocated by the target is less. So discrepancy is underestimated and the target group readily accepts the persuasive message sent by the source. However, if the message is falling in zone of indifference, then it is a situation of indecisiveness. You are not able to decide whether to get persuaded or not. So you are like a fence sitter. You are not able to decide only क्या करना है. तो मेरे लिए फिर बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगी आपको persuade करना, क्योंकि आप तो कोई decision ही नहीं ले पा रहे हो. और तीसरा, if my message falls in zone of rejection, then you will assume that the discrepancy between the position advocated by me and the position held by you is overestimated. Matlab, it is much more. The discrepancy is very high. Outrightly, you will reject my message. Is that clear? So now I know this. Take it. So now I will, first of all, if I have to persuade you, I will look for a person whose zone of acceptance is broad. तभी तो the probability of my message falling in your zone of acceptance, एक सिंपल सी बात है, मैंने अभी आपको बताया कि अगर मैसेज जोन ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस में फॉल करता है, इसका क्या मतलब है? जोन ऑफ इंडिफरेंस में फॉल करता है, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग? एंड जोन ऑफ रिजेक्शन में फॉल करता है, व्हाट इज द मीनिंग? आई हैव टोल्ड यू ऑल द थ्री थिंग्स. अगर जोन ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस में फॉल कर रहा है, इसका मतलब है द डिस्क्रिपेंसी बिटवीन द पोजीशन हेल्ड बाय द सोर्स एज वेल एज द पोजीशन हेल्ड बाय द टारगेट ग्रुप इज अंडर एस्टिमेटेड. मतलब there is not much discrepancy between the message, so you will be persuaded. But if it is falling in zone of rejection, then it will be overestimated, the discrepancy between the position held by the source and the position held by the target group. So you will reject the message. Indifference mein you will not be able to decide. So I want my persuasion to be successful. So first and foremost, I have to look for a person. I will never go for this person because इसका तो zone of acceptance इतना छोटा है कि मैं जो भी मैसेज भेजूंगी, the chances of falling in zone of rejection is very high. So I should look for a person जिसका zone of acceptance ज्यादा हो. कौन होते हैं ये लोग जिनका zone of acceptance ज्यादा होता है? ये वो लोग होते हैं जो educated है, rational है, empathetic हैं, compassionate हैं, tolerant हैं. These are the people whose zone of acceptance automatically is very high, very wide. So the people we should look for are those who are educated, tolerant, patient, empathetic, compassionate, kind-hearted. These are the people who have wider zone of acceptance. So the chances of successful persuasion would be very high. पहली चीज. दूसरी चीज, once you have chosen the people with broad zone of acceptance, now I should further try to increase the zone of acceptance. जितना zone of acceptance बढ़ता जाएगा, उतना probability of successful persuasion will increase. How can I increase the zone of acceptance? By ensuring that my source is credible, attractive, and has power. Automatically, the zone of acceptance of the target group will increase. So, if I have credibility, attractiveness, and power. Secondly, if I am presenting my message keeping in mind the social cultural setup of target group, again the zone of acceptance will increase. मतलब you should present the message in culturally congruent manner, अगर simple words में लिखना हो. Third, if I am able to make my message interesting and utilitarian, the zone of acceptance will increase. Did you get the point? First, we should look for those people who have wide zone of acceptance. And further, we should make efforts to increase the zone of acceptance. What can be done to increase the zone of acceptance is by ensuring that the source has credibility, attractiveness, and power. Second, the message is interesting, it is serving some utility, and also it is presented in a culturally congruent manner. Is that clear? हाँ, we are increasing the zone of acceptance of the same person whom we have chosen. जितना वाइड जोन ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस होता जाएगा, उतनी पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ रिजेक्शन ऑफ परसुएसिव मैसेज विल डिक्रीज. तो पहली बात तो ऐसे लोग ढूंढ लो जो थोड़े फ्लेक्सिबल हो, फैसिलिटेटर हो, ओपन माइंडेड हो. जो पहले ही बहुत रिजिड हैं, कॉन्जर्वेटिव हैं, ठीक है, ऑर्थोडॉक्स हैं, वो सुनेंगे ही नहीं आप क्या बोलना चाह रहे हैं. वो कहेंगे हमको सुनना ही नहीं है. So you have to look for the people who are flexible. You have to look for the people who are open-minded, who are educated, who are rational, who are ready to accept their mistakes, who are compassionate, who are patient, tolerant. तो ये हमने चुन लिया. बट इसके बाद भी क्या प्रोबेबिलिटी है कि आपका मैसेज एक्सेप्ट होगा कि नहीं? So I have to further make efforts to increase the zone of acceptance. And for this, if my source is credible, attractive, powerful, the chances of accepting the persuasive message is very high. If I am providing you the message, keeping in mind your socio-cultural setup or milieu or background, the chances of getting accepted, the persuasive message again is very high. Is this very clear? Did you understand what we are trying to say? And most importantly, if your message is serving some utility for you, if your message is interesting, again, the zone of acceptance with respect to that message will increase. Is this clear for everyone? Have you written something so far? एक लाइन में लिखो just for your reference. Zone of acceptance Zone of acceptance. Write down. If the message falls in zone of acceptance, if the message falls in zone of acceptance, if the message falls in zone of acceptance, the perceived discrepancy, if the message falls Aditya, there are different ways of doing it. For example, usually in the society, there are three types of people: facilitator, resistor, and fence sitter. Facilitator are the ones we are talking about: open minded, flexible, all of that. Resistor, as the name suggests, rigid, not ready to change. Fence sitter, not able to decide. We should always first look for facilitators because it is easy to convince them, it is easy to change them, right? And once the facilitator are convinced, over a period of time, it will have a snowballing effect. And in that snowballing effect, they are going to influence the fence sitter who were not able to decide. But now it would be easy for them to take a stand, right? And over the period of time, this can likely to influence the resistors in the society, because now these resistors would be the odd one out, right? So then over a period of time, however, if by mistake you choose the resistors first or the fence sitter, then to bring about change would be a very challenging task. That's one thing. Second thing, you are asking that how these the resistors or the people who are not open-minded, how can you change them? See, it is a very difficult task to change them. So either you need to ensure compliance by use of power. That can be one thing which can be done. Or you need to convince them that by changing their attitude, their initial intentions are served better. Remember, I told you, you carry a certain attitude because it is serving some need for you. So either you convince them that the changing their attitude or changing their behavior is going to serve their need better. For example, there might be some people who are not sending their girls to school because they believe that if girls become educated, they would not be performing domestic chores. They would not be taking care of the family, right? And hence the stability of the family will come under threat. And that is why they are not interested in sending their girls to school, because their major concern is the stability in the family. However, if you convince them that by changing their attitude towards girl education, the stability of the family, instead of getting negatively impacted, will further be strengthened. Because if your girls are educated, they are aware about health, they are aware about nourishment, they are rational, they will be able to give good value system to the children in the family. They will be able to save more money in the family. तो उनको उन्हीं की भाषा में समझाओ, right? That changing your attitude towards girls' education, in fact, your need of ensuring stability in the family can be served better. अगर लड़की पढ़ी हुई, if you are educating a woman, you are educating a generation. It is the women who is responsible for primary socialization of the kids and taking care of the elder people in the family. So if your girls are educated, right, so they would be able to give right kind of value system. They will be able to ensure better health for your children. They would be able to ensure better education for your children. Right? So instead of hampering the stability, they will further strengthen the stability. इस तरह से समझाओ. Remember, we have discussed this कि अगर attitude change करना होता है तो suggest an alternative attitude which can serve the existing need better. तो depend करता है how you are trying to convince them. Is that very clear? नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, नहीं। तभी मैंने कहा गिरधर, लेट्स नॉट जंप टू द कंक्लूजन्स, बिकॉज आई टोल्ड यू देयर इज अ सोर्स कैरेक्टरिस्टिक, there is a message characteristic, and then I said there is a receiver characteristic. And in receiver characteristic, we will discuss intelligence. We will discuss to what extent they have self-efficacy. We will discuss to what extent they have self-esteem. तो जब हम ये तीनों चीजें एक साथ डिस्कस करेंगे तब आपको समझ आएगा what kind of source, what kind of message, and what kind of receiver is the need of the hour. Is this very clear? इज इट्स मेकिंग सेंस गिरधर? ठीक है, तो ऐसा थोड़ी ना है हम बिन पहनेंगे लोटे थोड़ी ना लेकर आएंगे कि जिनको आज कन्विंस किया कोई और आके कन्विंस कर रहा है तो वो उसकी तरफ निकल गए। हमें रिसीवर्स बहुत सोच के चूज करना पड़ेगा। फैसिलिटेटर डज नॉट मीन इजी टू कन्विंस, फैसिलिटेटर मीन्स ओपन माइंडेड, at least they are ready to change if something is worth changing. So for that you are looking for a person who's intelligent, you are looking for a person who has self efficacy. ये अभी हम पढ़ेंगे जब हम रिसीवर करेंगे। इज दिस वेरी क्लियर फॉर एवरीवन? लिखो, राइट डाउन, इफ द मैसेज फॉल्स इन जोन ऑफ एक्सेप्टेंस, the perceived discrepancy in the position advocated, perceived discrepancy in the position advocated by the source and the position held by the target group, and the position held by the target group is underestimated, and the position held by the target group is underestimated. Hence, the message is likely to be accepted. Hence, the message is likely to be accepted. Next, however, if the message falls in zone of rejection, if the message falls in zone of rejection, the discrepancy is overestimated, and message is likely to be rejected. Discrepancy is overestimated and message is likely to be rejected. And message is likely to be rejected. However, if the message falls in zone of indifference, then we are indecisive, or we are not interested. Then we are indecisive or we are not interested. Next, to ensure successful persuasion, we should look for people who have large zone of acceptance, For example, educated, tolerant, patient, जो भी वर्ड्स लिखे हैं लिख लो, educated, tolerant, patient, rational, empathetic, compassionate, etc. Next, further efforts should be made to increase the zone of acceptance. Further efforts should be made to increase the zone of acceptance. For example, ये तीनों पॉइंट्स लिख लो. For example, the source should be credible, attractive and powerful. Second, the message should be presented in culturally congruent manner. And third, it should be interesting and utilitarian. It should be interesting and utilitarian. क्लियर है? एक छोटा सा ले लेते हैं और then we'll wind up the lecture. One, there was a point na, emotional and factual appeal. So just write that aspect. It's quite obvious. The best persuasive message is one which has both emotional plus factual appeal. However, if given a choice, it's the emotional appeal which works better as compared to the factual appeal. And last would be neither emotional nor factual. Remember logos and pathos, if given a choice, it is the pathos which works better. So एक line में बस लिख लो. Best results are obtained when the persuasive message, best results are obtained when the persuasive message has both factual and emotional appeal in it. Persuasive message has both factual and emotional appeal in it. और ये बना लो, emotional plus factual is better than emotional, is better than factual, is better than neither emotional nor factual. Is this clear for everyone? That question of Aristotle would be the assignment question. I'll continue. I have day after tomorrow, I have a class with you. So I will continue with this and we'll start with emotional intelligence because I think hardly 1.5 hours would be required and we'll finish it off. And then I'll start with emotional intelligence in the next class itself. रिमझिम मैंने लिखवाया है ना zone of acceptance वाला under message discrepancy, that if the message falls in zone of acceptance, then the perceived discrepancy in the position advocated by the source and the target group is underestimated and likely the messages will be accepted by the target group. Nahi Rimjim, next class is not the last class. I will be requiring 2.5 classes more. Yes.
Yes, so I will be requiring 2.5 classes. So I think day after tomorrow I have a class with you. So that's Wednesday. Thursday also I have a class with you. Okay, so let's see. Let me just finish with Wednesday and Thursday. At max, half lecture would be required more. Okay, officially we have concluded the lecture. Officially, I am concluding the lecture. Ma'am, after doing 2 classes every day, I do not get enough time to prepare. So please tell me what to do now and how to manage time. Neeraj, how to manage time, bache? You're writing your prelims this year. So today is what? Today is 14th of March, April, May. We have 2 months left, right? 2.5 months. See, Neeraj, that will depend how much are you prepared for your prelims, right? If you think you still have considerable amount of portions left, then I would suggest that do not attend the lectures which are very main specific. So do not attend the lectures if they are very main specific. That depends upon your individual preparation level. So if you are somewhat prepared with the prelims, another 1 week the lectures can be attended. But in case you are finding that you are not prepared or psychologically pressure create ho raha hai, so try to attend one lecture and you can skip the other one. It depends. ठीक है, तो जो बहुत मेन स्पेसिफिक लेक्चर हो रहे हैं, अब जैसे एथिक्स वगैरह है, अवॉइड कर सकते हो. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट लेक्चर में इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस शुरू कर दूंगी. थोड़ा बहुत समझ लेना इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस, अगर जरूरत लगे, नहीं तो तुम बाद में भी देख सकते हो. So that is not a problem. So if you are writing prelims this year and you think that you are not well prepared and psychological stress is getting created, then I would suggest one can avoid that. Is this very clear? ठीक है? Is it making sense? ठीक. सो इतना स्ट्रेस नहीं लेना है. अगर 1% भी लग रहा है तो बाद में किया जा सकता है आराम से, तो उसका स्ट्रेस मत लो. जो आराम से कन्वीनियंटली हो सके वो पढ़ाई करो. इज दैट वेरी क्लियर? ठीक है, चलो. सो ऑन दिस नोट आई विल कंक्लूड द लेक्चर एंड we will meet day after tomorrow. ठीक है, so that Aristotle वाला question would be the assignment question. चलो, I'll meet you in the next class. Take care, people.